Father, thank you for this day, and may your grace cover each aspect of this meeting. We pray that all voices will be heard and that this will be a safe space for people to express their opinions. Please help guide our community leaders in the decisions they make. We ask you watch over our first responders and military and bring comfort to those in need during this holiday season. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thanks everybody for being here tonight. One of my own council members said that right now we still don't have our sound system, so be sure to speak up. People in the back in here, y'all can't hear it, please say something. Speak up, I know that. Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
We're gonna get a report from the Board of Councilors before we go.
Yeah, so I'm from the local troop. We meet over at the maintenance building. Just an update on the past month, I guess. We had our last meeting of the semester last night. We'll be starting back up again in January. We recently started a fundraiser, and also we committed to a summer camp we're going to be going to next summer in Colorado. So out at Pikes Peak and stuff. That's going to be in July. So yeah, not really much going on this month, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, appreciate that. Okay, as our usual starting announcement, citizens who wish to be council on any matter may sign up. If you're able to identify them, please do so prior to the meeting. Public comments will be received during this portion of the meeting. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. If the, whatever you're talking about is not on the agenda, we are not allowed to discuss it. I'll say that. Okay? Going from there, well, we got a few people want to make some comments, so we'll start with Todd Hodge. I think we will.
Yeah. Sorry, he was babysitting me.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor, citizens. The topic I'd like to address as an employee with the city is the proposed communications and marketing coordinator. So I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm a cop, sergeant. I show up to work to my job, but I've been with the city for about 8.5 years, and some stuff that's been said over the past couple of city council meetings kind of got me to me. You know, I think that even with my experience, there's too much passing on extra jobs to people that subtracts from their daily operations. A good example is now is I'm the only one on the streets, but I'm here doing video projecting because we're short-staffed and guys are at training. So I don't know the situation at City Council, at City Hall and their needs, but I think it's kind of hard to say as council members or anybody really what they do and do not need as employees at there. I think it's best that if it's recommended by department heads or city manager or even council that they need it, they need it. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Linda? Bridget, you're next. Please state your name and address, please. Todd, we just figured we knew who you were.
So my name is Linda Bridges, 197 Lake Forest Drive, and I'm here today to speak in favor of hiring a marketing and communications coordinator sooner rather than later. I want to offer my thanks to the city aldermen and city staff for their well thought out goals in the city's strategic plan. You've identified solutions to not only existing problems, but ideas that would improve communication with both our residents and volunteers as well. In the strategic plan, you include the need for a newsletter. At my first business network roundtable, I asked the attendees what keeps them up at night. Supply issues and lack of employees were major issues. Those are pretty typical in business, but they added a third concern, and that was with the city of Morgan's Point. They all felt that city-driven communication should be improved. Business decisions, and personal ones as well, are much easier to make when information is available, honest, responsive, and genuine. In the strategic plan, you include a public information officer. I totally agree. Residents and volunteers need a go-to person who will both receive and respond to residents and business owners who have questions regarding city services, community activities, and events. Just from comments I read on Facebook, I really don't think the majority of our residents know who to contact for specific answers to specific questions. This is a perfect job for the go-to communications employee. In the strategic plan, you include the need for public education on all things Morgan's Point. I totally agree. When I first moved to Morgan's Point, all I heard were complaints on the unfairness of carport permits, variance, no variances. The Planning and Zoning Committee has an idea to create public service announcements to explain everything from septic tanks to carports. And I think this is a great task for a communications employee. In the strategic plan, the need for updates, both in the planning stage. We have a committee, an ordinance 103. It says a volunteer should do it. I think it should be an employee. So I agree with your strategic plan that you should hire a communication professional. Thank you.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that. Larry, your turn.
Larry Hartman, 112 Great West Loop. I put down stewardship. Have we had the audit yet? Have we gotten the audit back yet?
No comment.
No.
I mean, it's yes or no. Well, to be a good steward of the city, which is the city council and residents, we vote on you guys, and you guys vote on the budget. And a good steward will have a financial report in front of them to see if we can even afford to do what we're talking about. In it, we voted, well, two voted to go with the master plan, and that's what, $150,000, and we don't know if we have it in the, there's no financial report. So, and not that we don't need it, we need all these things, but can we afford it? And so my recommendation is, if I was in your position, if I didn't have a financial report saying, hey, you've got the money, I wouldn't do it till you had the money. If you have the money, great. If you don't have the money, well, where are you going to get it? And next year, then something's going to happen. And lastly, last month, I asked you about the, we lost $1,000 last month from the previous year from the Texas Comptroller. Well, December, we're down another 1,000 just from the Texas Comptroller. So I'm not sure where the money's going or why we don't have it, but I would definitely, before I do anything, look for a financial report. Thank you for your attention.
Misty?
Hi, I'm Misty Ballard, 2 Admiral Circle. I don't have anything prepared, and I missed the last meeting, so I had to go off everybody else's information. On the communications coordinator, it's my understanding that this was already approved in the budget. The money is already there. $42,000 is what the pay is supposed to be, from what I understand. That being said, the times that I've worked with the ladies in City Hall, they are busy. They have a lot to do. It's really hard to task some of this information onto them to give them more tasks. And I know a lot of times this city is depending on the volunteers to get all this information out. But these volunteers are either doing this volunteer work in addition to the jobs they already have, and some of them are doing so much work that it's almost like a full-time job. You watch them, and they're getting so much done. They're putting in hours during the week. They're staying up on the weekends. They're getting things done. And I watched it whenever they were playing in the art festival. You watch it with NPR cops. You watch it whenever they're trying to do appreciation for the fire department. They put a lot of work into this. And they're what makes NPR a good community. In addition to that, when they're doing all of this, they take a beating. If you go on the neighborhood page, you see where people complain about the lack of communication or how it was put out. There's never a right answer. Not to mention what they went through this past year, which was with the charter. These were the people that always volunteered. These are the people that always sign up for everything that you need in this city. And that being said, they were verbally abused. They were yelled at on a regular basis. And at some point, you have to stop taking advantage of the time that they give. And the only way that you can do that is if you bring on someone who can take on those tasks. And that's the communication specialist. Like I said, if it's in the budget, if the pay is there, if it's fair, I don't see any reason why y'all are gonna say no.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Roxanne?
Thank you. Roxanne Stryker, 11 Sandbass Drive. And I came to the meeting last month, and I heard you talk about a communication specialist. From what I understood, it wasn't necessarily in the budget yet. It had not been totally voted on. So I was just thinking, after I left, I thought about it, and I went on the Neighbors of Morgan's Point website. And I was watching, I did what we call, is now been named Trashgate on the website. And I looked at all of the responses that were over and over and over again, and people would ask the same questions multiple times. And even one person said, "What day is my trash pickup?" And somebody else referred them to the little brochure that came out, and they were, "Oh, I think I threw that away." And so I started to think about, how in the world could a communications person change any of that? That's what I think if people really want to know, we've got this admin page, the Notify Me, and the Neighbors of Morgan's Point website gives so much information now, and still people don't listen or pay attention. It was mentioned multiple times to sign up, and it's just an easy newsletter to go out. So I guess I started wondering, what exactly would that communications person do that would benefit any different than what we're doing currently? And then I started to look at, our economy and our huge inflation rate. And you look around this neighborhood, and we're not all wealthy people here. And some people are raising kids, and we're adding one more thing onto our budget. And honestly, when I came here from San Antonio, I was absolutely appalled, because my taxes are 1/3 more here than they were in San Antonio, Texas, and I had a bigger house there, slightly bigger. So I just think we have to be careful, especially with this economy that we're in, that we don't start adding, because I of all people would not want to hire someone and say, "Whoops, we made a mistake and can't afford them," especially considering our road infrastructure that needs to be taken care of, the water infrastructure that needs to be taken care of, and we're only 5,000 people. That's a very few people to hire one more position that, even though it would be nice, I'm not sure would be necessary. So I hope you consider those things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sam?
Hi, I'm Lynn Mound, 28 Morgan's Point Boulevard. President of the Morgan's Point Resort Cops on the Ladies Auxiliary, the council, the Home Rule Agenda Committee, any other thing, you name it, I'm there. On top of 7 grandchildren, 4 children, 1 biological, 3 steps, and 4 jobs. So yes, the one that was laughing back there when people said that they have other jobs, we do. I wanted to thank the residents of Morgan's Point. I knew anytime something like this, and I've got to count to 10 right now, but anytime something like this comes out, the same faces come out, and you never see them unless they want to go against something. They want to tell us how bad we are. But you want all this change, but you don't want to do it. It gets pushed down the road to the next meeting. It gets pushed down to the road on the next agenda. It's standard MO. It's what happens every time. But today I want to thank the residents of Morgan's Point for their generous donations to the Morgan's Point Cops Silver Santa Stocking Program. We got a lot of cash donations. We got a lot of donations of supplies for the stockings, and it was a great success. We're going to make this a yearly event. I would like to thank all of the volunteers who came out to support the MPR Cops with our tables at the Santa event, which was packed with kids, packed. And at the Christmas event, the volunteers that came out, we made ornaments. One little child gave me this ornament because he said he didn't think it was good enough to go on his tree at home. Aww. But he gave it to me, and I'll treasure this little ornament. And we also had a coloring contest with those kids, and they just sat there and colored their, I don't know how many parents came and said, let's go, honey, let's go. No, Mom, I'm in a contest. And I just got, my heart was just filled the whole evening. It was just electric. I was happy to see Mayor Green there, and I was really happy to see Dalton Rice there with his family. And after the family left, I would like to thank Dalton because he helped us break down the tables. He didn't have to do that. But, you know, for somebody who gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work and then comes straight here from work to do that, 9 o'clock, him helping got me home 5 minutes sooner. Praise God. Thank you, Dalton. 5 minutes, I got to bed 5 minutes sooner. But guess what? I got up at 4 o'clock next morning, too. But anyway, I thank you for that. I also want to thank Mayor Green and Dalton for taking time to come to the 3rd annual Cops and, well, it was this year, it was the first year for Cops, but the firefighters promotion and awards ceremony. They came out, they showed their support. It's a wonderful event. We find out, you know, they tell us things about the police and what good jobs they do through the year and who saves lives, who actually saves lives. We find out about these things. And also the same with the firefighters. They were both there, and I appreciate very much y'all showing up. Thank you. And then I'd like to thank some of the council people. I reached out to a few of y'all to, I guess, just say some things that I felt, and I felt so bad. The first one I called, answered the phone immediately. I didn't realize he was on vacation. And when I did, I said, let me go. He said, absolutely not, Lynn. That's what I'm here for. We talked for 45 minutes. He was out of state. Thank you. Then the second one that I called, I found out later had 104.5 degree temperature. He had his spouse call me and say, this is what's going on. He's missed 3 days of work so far. He'll get back to you when he can lift his head off the pillow. Thank you. And I heard from the other one as well. So I just wanted to say thanks that you made my concerns, what I had to say, important right then, and you didn't kick them down the road that we do so much of here. And then I'd also like to thank Chief Schutze. For the first time ever, since we've got a new chief, the guys come out all the time to our events. They come up and help us with Morgan's Point, the cops organization. They're nice and they're funny, and there's a whole other side of the cop officer part, and they're just great guys, and they've been helping us a lot. And Schutze took the time this year to write us all a personal note and bake cookies. I'm sure his wife did it, but I hope she did. Well, I'm still here. I'm sure she did. So bake cookies for us to thank us for all we do. That's the first time I've ever heard that. But in all of this, I'm giving thanks. Thanks for my 3 minutes.
Appreciate it. Andrea, I saw you send me, oh, there you are.
Yes, I am here, and I guess I will not take offense, but I'm one of the people that on occasion complains because, well, sometimes you find things that are not right. So please consider that not everybody is interested in joining the cops. Some people are interested in joining other organizations. That doesn't mean we don't like the city. So, but I sometimes feel like when people have to rattle off their bio of what all they do for the city, oh, I'm here, I really don't do that much because I do other things. Slightly offensive. There are other people living in the city that do not do everything. Okay, now, a communications event promoter, whatever. I guess I'm here to echo what Larry said and what Roxanne said. Or I was wondering. I personally feel communication here in the city is great. Could it be improved? Everything can be improved. But I think the city so far has been doing a great job of getting information out. Maybe every 3 months a newsletter. I wonder, do we really have events here that need to be promoted? My understanding is when a volunteer organization has an event, the volunteer organization promotes this event, not the city. The volunteer organizations that I'm active with, we promote our events. We don't go to the particular city or government and ask them, can you promote our event? To my knowledge, there is really no event in Morgan's Point that the city per se puts on that needs promotion. I don't see a lot of
businesses here that need promotion. I mean, the backyard barbecue, the parking lot is always packed. I don't know what we can do to help them. Airbnbs, I don't really know about that, if that should be promoted. So I wonder, do we have enough money? We spend money on a lawyer that supposedly helps us to write a charter, and then it's voted down. We have a master plan that costs thousands of dollars, and I'm not quite sure what to think about the master plan, where there are other people from other cities are able to give input, how that's going to benefit us. I've heard today from the dollar store that their tax, whatever, their income is down, and when I read in the paper the tax is coming in, this is going down, or has been going down. So I just really wonder, I guess I want to appeal to the city council, are you good stewards by putting in a position that basically just costs money and we probably have no return? I guess I've read it long enough, so please consider before you vote for creating a position for a marketing director, if the city of Morgan's Point really needs a marketing director. Thank you.
Jim Ann, your last one, at the bottom anyway.
I've been thinking for the last week about what I should say, but given the people who have stood up here and have spoken in favor of hiring a communications specialist, I will just say I totally agree with all of them. And please, please, stop procrastinating and take a vote tonight on it. It's been going on since August. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, that's all of the comments from citizens. Item number 3 is our consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to accept the,
I would like to remove the audio visual for questions, so I'd like to remove it off the consent.
Let's accept the deal, and then we'll talk about it, okay?
No,
That's the right way.
no, I'm the right order. You have to take it off before there's a vote on the consent
Well,
agenda,
what
Mr.
they're-
Mayor.
what they're discussing is what I was saying, we're discussing. You would take out
I want to take it off the consent agenda. Thank you.
anything else you want to take off? The minutes, is y'all okay on that? We're gonna remove the, we're gonna talk about the audio here separately, so that, other than that, do I hear a motion to accept the rest of the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second?
A second.
Okay. Any discussion on it? Anybody? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we're going into the audio, is that part of it?
I just had a couple questions to ask on it. I see with the, yeah, I know we've talked about the, the budget, and I know we're going for the lowest figure, the 25, and maybe doing the TV at a different time. But my question is down here, they talked about, and maybe Todd, I think you've been working on this. It said if there's any extra work, any electrical needs, any painting touch-ups, they don't do that. And then they talk about it being a partial install based on supply chain. I didn't know what that meant. And so I just want to make sure that if we're doing this, we have enough money in there, not come back again and say, oh, now we need some money for electrical, painting. And I'm not sure what it means, partial install.
So I can touch it.
Thank you.
So all electrical work will be done. The only thing they won't do is if they had to cut a hole, pretty much patch it. But pretty much what the guy told me is they're gonna build a rack. The only holes they're cutting is gonna be for an outlet underneath the TV, which is for if you rent the community center, they can rent the AV equipment and plug in a laptop or TV or something, whatever. So there's gonna be minimal electrical. They're gonna run a wire to that side also, but there should be no major cutting holes in the wall or extra electrical work because they pretty much handle all that also.
Okay, well, it said they didn't do extra electrical work, that's why I questioned it. But we
Well,
shouldn't need
extra, like
that.
adding another outlet and stuff like that.
I gotcha.
Now, the stuff they have to do, there's enough outlets in there for them. So, it's just, if there need to be one, they would, but he didn't state there would need to be one.
And we do have a
Okay.
budget for building structural maintenance, so if we had to, we could do some of that in-house.
Okay,
patchwork.
so you
So we do
feel,
have a budget
you
for it.
feel this is enough money that we're putting in here, is my question?
Yes,
That
ma'am.
it
And
will
so the-
cover
the-
it and get it ready to
The
go?
partial install based on supply chain, so basically we knew that this was a big priority for the council, and of course with supply chain issues, the equipment under the $21,500 one, it could be 9 months to 6 months to 8 months, we don't know. So going to partial install, if the supply chain drags out too long, that partial install would basically cover the cost of being able to do it within 90 days, so at least we can get the equipment up and running while the other supply chain stuff comes in. So it's just another, we don't have to do it, council can say, hey, we don't want the partial install. We put that in there just in case the supply chain drug out and we couldn't get the necessary equipment in within a reasonable time. So we're projecting 6 months 6 to 8 months for the 21,500, at the worst case potential scenario, and 90 days roughly, so March timeframe if we did the partial install. So we wanted to put that option in there just in case we did run into some hiccups. That way we could go ahead and make those decisions on the partial install to get some audio stuff within the center.
Right. I just wanted to make sure it was turnkey, and we didn't come back later and say, oh, we need this, that, and we want it up and running.
Absolutely.
Because we've got a real bad problem with our audio. And one other question, since we're speaking of audio, can we set the chairs up closer to where the council is? They're so far back. What's that? They think it's church, I know, and the front row is the back row. I mean, can next time we set it up where it's, I mean, I'm not afraid of y'all if y'all are not afraid of me. Let's get a little closer here so that we can,
We'll ask if you wanted to.
yeah.
Love to get further.
But you feel that this is adequate, and you feel like the council is going to continue to meet in this event center and not back at the,
I think so, and really, I mean, that's actually a council decision if y'all want to do that or not. We're projecting or foreseeing that with our turnout, with the community involvement, I mean, even with the number of people here, the library would not be feasible, in my opinion. The other thing too, and we don't have to do this now, we could bring an ordinance to it later regarding it, but one of the multifaceted uses of having the audio-visual here is you can kind of upsell it for those events and conferences for those who would need AV equipment. So we won't leave that open for anybody to use at any given time. The equipment would be stored behind there, behind a box. Ultimately, if somebody came in and, paid an additional fee that will bring the council at a later time, then they can use that audio-visual equipment. So in a way, it's kind of getting that ROI back.
So if they wanted to use the audio video, then it'd be an extra additional charge?
Yes, sir. And we haven't made that decision yet. That'll be through an ordinance at a later date, if that's a direction that council would want to go. But, so it's kind of not just singular use, even if council decided to move into another location, ultimately that equipment would be here for the longevity of the community center.
Well, that would be my question, is what would be the proposed rate to using this equipment and our ROI on this investment?
I couldn't even begin to throw a number at you, because ultimately this was brought, for council, and for the residents to communicate. So initially, the anticipation wasn't to have an ROI on it. The ROI was having our residents engaged, being able to hear what we had to say, both live stream, and in here for those who talk quietly. So we didn't plan on the ROI, but that is just an added bonus once we do bring that, if council goes that direction.
Does that answer everybody's question? Okay, we need to vote on that. Accept, motion to accept the consent agenda on the audio.
I also move that we accept the bid on that.
Not to exceed the 31, and you would put that in your dollar?
Well, did you want to do the TV function? Because that includes the TV function.
We can
No.
just we budgeted the 25,000. We
Okay,
can
and
just do at the budgeted rate, and then if it
That's
comes
what I was
under-
asking, making sure we had it.
Yeah,
So,
we're-
yes.
Yeah, I apologize. In the memo, it basically states our staff recommendation is to go with the partial option. That way we
Right.
have some flexibility. Go with the main option, the base option. Leave the TV off. We can put that in a later date, during budget or some other time.
Okay. So I move then that we go forward with the budget amount that we've already budgeted of $25,000 to improve our audio system for our residents.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, Mary. And any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. EDC. Who wants to give that? Linda's gonna give that? EDC, by the way, Economic Development Corporation, I think everybody knows that, so.
So I'm giving the report for, it would be 21-22. So thanks for including me on the agenda to share with you and our residents the EDC's highlights and projects over the last year. The kiddie section of Clapus Park was completed. The board decided on a business plan that would require all short-term projects to be chaired by a volunteer. Members researched community gardens, farmers markets, veterans memorials, and historic markers. 2 resident volunteers were recruited, one to establish a chamber of commerce and the other to establish a farmers market. Sadly, only one volunteer was able to continue volunteering with the EDC and currently chairs the new NPR Business Network. We are finding that it's not too difficult to recruit a volunteer to research and establish a project, but maintaining something like a farmer's market or chamber of commerce is not so easy. We started a new Discover Morgan's Point Resort communication and marketing campaign. Can you think of nothing better than the opportunity to live, work, and play in Morgan's Point? That's what we're advertising. Can you think of, we started a campaign to build a new business directory, a new EDC website, a new monthly business newsletter, a new closed Facebook group, a new monthly roundtable social to discuss all things Morgan's Points. And we're increasing the number of posts on our regular EDC Facebook page. 2 pilot programs were initiated, cardboard recycling and food trucks. The trucks and pop-ups were strategically set up throughout the city during the summer. Both programs are doing okay, but need to be tweaked to be successful. So along with a solution for wastewater for the business district, the EDC looks forward to working with the city on our shared strategic plan for smart economic development in Morgan's Point. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Ken, are you going to do the planning and zoning? Yes. Would you like to do that next?
I'll be right up, yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, our Planning and Zoning Committee met on November the 29th. During the meeting, the following items were discussed and voted on for consideration of the Morgan's Point City Council. First item was the Planning and Zoning discussed a garbage enclosure for commercial containers ordinance. City staff is currently working on a draft to present to our next meeting. Second item, Planning and Zoning discussed a sign ordinance. City staff is currently working on a draft to present as well. That will be coming at a later date for y'all to consider. Planning and Zoning discussed and voted on a storage on undeveloped lots ordinance. The updated ordinance is being presented to City Council tonight. Y'all should have that. Planning and Zoning also discussed and voted on a new member to the Planning and Zoning. Gentleman's name is Louis Gilead. Hope I got that right. For appointment to the Planning and Zoning. That recommendation is being presented tonight for City Council's consideration. Our next meeting will not be until January the 24th. We have no additional meeting planned for December at this point. On the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee, met most recently on November the 17th. During that meeting, the following items were discussed. Number one was everybody discussed the previous workshop in October and the participation that we had there and the feedback from those areas. Also worked on a vision and goals worksheet, phrases or words to be incorporated into the City Council's comprehensive plan, the vision of the city, particular goals or topics for the elements to be included. And the third item there was the engineering firm and city staff are finishing editing the survey, which should be available this month. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might.
Council? Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
We appreciate it. We'll get you around to reviewing your
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Okay, next, item 5 is presentations. One is the wholesale wastewater facility. You gonna do that with Dalton?
Yes, sir. All right. Hope everybody likes my jacket. If you would like to know who the tailor is, please see Mayor Green. He has a phenomenal tailor. No, I made this own bad decision on my own. So I'm standing up here to talk about wastewater feasibility. It's here. It is finally here. I've been here almost 2 years, and I know there was talk even before I came on board. I know Mark Allen with the EDC has really spearheaded a lot of the stuff, with the Economic Development Corporation on what a wastewater feasibility study would look like with the city of Temple. I have somebody else here, Jeff Caldwell, which I'll introduce here in a little while. And really what we want to do tonight is present 3 options to city council ultimately to make decisions. We're going to say there's a 4th one, but we don't want to talk about the 4th one. And really what it'll kind of boil down to is this is the feasibility piece. So there's a feasibility component. Actually, real quick, let me orient you to the packets. It got a little bit out of order. If you go to tab 6 in your packet, there's a memo there that talks about the feasibility options, option 1, 2, and 3. Option 1 is the presentation I'm going to currently do regarding the City of Temple feasibility plan. Option 2 is going to be the next presentation, and then option 3 will be a decision for a regular agenda item, should that we not go down that road, potentially. So also in section 6, right behind the memo, is going to be kind of a map. We'll just orient you to that map real quick. All the stuff on the Temple feasibility is really just kind of the plan, so I'll explain that a little bit. So this map is the proposed area from 317 to basically the 4 corners. Everything that's highlighted in red is ultimately what this feasibility study through the City of Temple would entail. Where the pit is ultimately is city of Morgan's Point limits. Our ETJ does extend a little bit east. Obviously, there's a lot of unknowns out there, but everything in the highlighted red is what this feasibility study would cover. Ultimately, the gist, and this is kind of really this is finishing out the hard work that Mark Allen and the EDC had done initially prior to me getting here, trying to figure out what options we had with the City of Temple. And once it kind of finally came to fruition, the total plan cost would be about $140-ish thousand. City of Temple said that they're going to cover half of that, leaving the rest of it up to about 4 or 5 members. So that would be potentially City of Morgan's Point Resort, Morgan's Point Resort EDC, Economic Development, and if Omega or other builders wanted to take part in it, then that cost would be split. When I last spoke with one of the ACMs, or the project leads over at Temple on this, there was 4 out of the 5 that had confirmed committals. And so ultimately, it would be about $73,800 would be, we'll say, the remaining portion that would need to be funded. We're projecting with the 4 committals that it'll roughly be between $15,000 to $25,000 in order just to do the feasibility study. What the feasibility study ultimately would do is just provide us guidance on what options do we have. Excuse me. How do we wholesale it from Temple? What equipment or infrastructure that we would need to put in? Do we need to put in a low pressure system, a high pressure system, a lift station? Where do we put that lift station? And ultimately, roughly an EOPC or an engineering opinion of probable cost. So that, we'll just say that $78,500 or $78,300 or $73,800, sorry. That portion of it, this study is just the study. It's just a master plan that would encompass that section that's in red, and that's it. And again, I don't have a timeline on that. I think Temple is going to be presenting their portion of committals come January to their city council to move forward with the project. And so really, if council decides to go that direction in conjunction with or stand alone to determine that feasibility, we'd be looking at anywhere between about $15,000 to $25,000 depending on committals. Ultimately, tonight we would just recommend, putting a number out there that city council is comfortable with to move forward with that feasibility. feasibility study. I don't have a timeline on completion or anything. Once we get that timeline and once we get that actual study back, then that'll kind of determine what it's going to cost, the city of Morgan's Point Resort to then put in the infrastructure, is there going to be any split costs with developers? There's a lot of unknowns. This is strictly just for the feasibility component of it. Do I have any questions on just this portion?
When you say Temple's committed to half 73.8, and then you say that we're going to make a commitment as there are other people, so 73.8 should not be our share, that's the other half.
Yes, ma'am.
So it should be less than that.
It should be less than that. So we're just saying that the other half split up among 4 or 5. So assuming come January, City Council has 5 committals, then, to include Morgan's Point Resort, or even potentially, splitting some of that cost with the EDC, which I briefly chatted with Linda about it, and she's going to bring, depending on direction council goes this evening, they can bring a matching component or another component to the table. We'll know more in January the total cost of that committal. So if council said, hey, we don't want to pay more than this regardless, and we bring that to Temple, then that's what's on the table. We would not be responsible for the $73,800.
And the other question I have, in the staff's recommendation, they recommend, I believe they recommend the one where we go into a contract with BVT.
Yes, ma'am.
Whatever, BVRT. Okay, sorry. And, but am I hearing you say we need to do this feasibility study first, even though option 1 you don't suggest? But what I'm hearing is we need to do a feasibility study to know what we should actually be doing. And the other thing is, this is a hunk of information. And although we've discussed wastewater, it's a whole lot to ingest. And I understand that you and Mayor Green and Robbie, thank you for your contributions to discussing this. But this is a lot to ingest to make a decision on in a short period of time.
And so, I kind of projected or predicted, a workshop, and we considered a workshop. But what are we going to talk about in a workshop? The feasibility of a feasibility study. And so that's kind of where taking the EDC's, course of action over the years and, looking at the assessments and stuff, this is just a feasibility. This is just to determine what that next step could be, which then a workshop would play a part in.
Wouldn't a workshop help us make a decision on the different options? Because it's hard to clearly understand these options.
So there's 2 different options. So staff recommendation is option 2, which I'll let Jeff Caldwell talk about the BVRT component. They're actually 2 separate things. There's 2 separate components. So option 1, while I put that as option 1, I wanted to put that as option 1 to talk about it because 1, we've been talking about it for 4 or 5 years, give or take. And it's separate. So when you look at the taxpayer dollars, no matter what, there's going to be a taxpayer component to it, whether that's the feasibility portion or the actual engineering and implementation and the construction costs, which would come at a later date. Option 1 is really, we'll call it a fallback. So let's say that council also decides to go with option 2, which is, again, a completely separate thing, and I'll let Jeff talk about it, and then we'll talk about how that came to fruition. This would basically just provide that kind of fallback of saying, hey, this is another option that we have at a lower cost, to the taxpayers, just to say, hey, we have this feasibility study. Should contract negotiations, if council decides to go that route, falls through, then we at least have the fallback of the feasibility study that we can use, at a later date. So that's why we wanted to put option 1 in there. Again, they're really 2 completely separate components and how those things are being done. Option 1 is a feasibility study, which will help us determine what that next course of action is. Option 2, to the point of what you had said about a turnkey kind of solution, option 2 is that turnkey solution that doesn't cost the taxpayers any money. And so that's why it's kind of a weird menu. This is really kind of an entree / dessert. It's multi-course, multi-option.
So the other players that are involved, the landowners, property owners, have they committed to paying their portion of this feasibility study?
I've only heard verbal from City of Temple project manager on this. I don't have anything in writing to confirm that or not. So ultimately, council would just kind of make a committal or on a price that y'all would want or feel comfortable with. and we could bring that to Temple and then kind of go from there. So they said 4 out of the 5 have committed, and that did include us. But again, I can't confirm, how solid those are. I don't know. So this is just the presentation component of it. So I'm going to introduce Jeff Caldwell. He's a consultant for BVRT. Let him kind of talk about that. Then we'll open it up for some much more discussion and kind of going from there and see what happens. Jeff Caldwell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, community members for being here tonight. I work for BVRT. I'm a consultant for BVRT. BVRT is a public or a private held utility company that does public-private partnerships. We also work with many small communities to mid-sized communities, and then also work with private developers. And our goal is really to work on making regional solutions for communities. There's no sense in there being multiple types of things going on. So we work towards regional solutions, and actually how I was brought into this discussions that we've been having was by a private developer. So we have some developers that have been talking to us about this area, and we really try to work with the local municipality if we can to try to find a solution, again, that'll be regional, that can benefit the established community as well as the new developments that are coming in. We are a little bit unique also in that we're not in competition with the city for any tax base or anything like that. So anybody we're working with, if they're in the ETJ, we actually work with them and encourage them to incorporate in so that you get those rooftop taxes off of that, and sales tax if it's commercial development as well. So we work in that way. We've been in the area or been in the state of Texas since 2013. We operate currently about 13 plants across the state. Each one of those is a wholly owned subsidy. We actually, when we work with the community, we want to become a part of that community. So we establish an office, we establish staff within that community, and we want to be integrated and be a part of that community. As I said, we work with both public entities and private entities, and so we have a unique operation as far as being able to serve both of those and being able to try to coordinate those interests and those efforts between the two. My background is actually in municipal government. I was a city manager for a small community, worked as a city director for a fairly large community over several departments. I watch what has happened in small communities, trying to manage growth, trying to figure out how to make these things work. And so it's been my passion to really work with the small communities as much as I can. The developers are great. They actually bring some money in, but the small communities, I think, are where the needs are and where there's a lot of opportunity to try and assist and help with private utility money. So you've got some information there. We have put together a draft, what we call just a draft agreement. It's not anything that's established at this point. It was just a draft that we put together to begin some conversations when we first started talking about this. I've also provided you with a little pamphlet that gives some more information about BVRT as a company. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
So a little bit more context on this too. Thank you, Jeff. This wasn't a thing that popped up a couple weeks ago. So this had probably started about 8 months ago, if not longer. I don't know, this year's kind of flown by. We had actually met BVRT through a developer that was, working with CC's and working with some other, businesses downtown, trying to figure out what options that do they have, trying to figure out wastewater solutions in conjunction with, I don't know, anything. So whatever wastewater feasibility. So we've tossed around several ideas, whether that was wholesale with Temple, whether that's microgridding it out and doing our own plant. BVRT was kind of a part of those discussions, at least, there. And really, to be kind of very frank, I've kind of strung Jeff and BVRT along probably for a good while. We kind of kept them at the table to include them in conversation with what options do we have. But we really wanted to pursue and figure out not necessarily how do we just throw something, throw a solution at a problem or a lack of a problem, but really provide something that's going to be, beneficial to our taxpayers. And so that draft proposal actually came out probably 3 months ago, give or take. And that kind of, from the city manager side, that kind of led me finally to believe, okay, I think we're at a point in time where we can talk. We had actually planned on bringing the BVRT proposal, draft proposal to council. the stars actually happened to align, and Temple came through and got the feasibility stuff together, and, you know, we met with all the players in Temple. So really, it kind of worked out perfect. I could not have planned to have all three of these options or two of these options on the table if I tried. And I, you know, had perfect scheduling. So it really just kind of all came together at once. With this, I want to talk about some of the things that we've brought up before. You know, I've heard Mr. Hartman talk about subsidization of, you know, wastewater. Currently, we do, in a way, subsidize wastewater. BVRT's option ultimately would eliminate that. They would ultimately take over the plant. Of course, we'd figure out the contract negotiation piece, which is really what we would be requesting tonight. Figure out what the future looks like. Just because, you know, if council decided to move on at this time, it would just open up conversation to say what is going to be the best option for the city if there is one. The other thing too is, as far as the ROI, we currently, you know, do about 80 units on our wastewater, and again, we tie in expenses and revenues, you know, into the wastewater, but most of those expenses, you know, do come out of the water department. One piece, which it kind of goes into option 3, which is saying, hey, we're just not ready. We don't want to go into the wastewater business at all. We just need to forget about it and move on until a later date, and just say no. We're still going to have to redo that lift station. We got a proposal probably, maybe a year ago, about a year ago, for engineering on the lift station. We're going to be looking at about $130,000 to engineer it, and probably another $500,000 to rebuild that lift station just for 80 units. Not to mention, if we do want to expand that current facility anywhere to expand out, then that's going to be on us, both in the TCEQ, the permitting, the whole shebang. You know, the question that I had for Jeff was, well, what's the catch? You know, what's the catch? Well, the catch is we don't have the customer service necessarily. We'd be working ultimately with BVRT, but the expenses are gone. We no longer have the expenses. We still own the land. We still own, you know, ultimately everything. They ultimately put in the infrastructure based off the private sector, you know, side of things, but we work with them. There still would be unified billing, and all that stuff would ultimately come out into the negotiations to figure out if there's a true feasibility there. All the permitting, the TCEQ, ultimately with BVRT, we get out of the wastewater business. That's really the kind of the bottom line up front. We get out of the wastewater business.
Basically, we're just, it comes to a fishing expedition right now to see which way council wants us to go.
Correct. So, sorry.
Getting back to that one, and I'm trying to read, and this is going back and forward between two different places, but, so the existing customers, existing plant, on one part I'm reading, the city shall continue to maintain and service the existing sewer line infrastructure in the city limits. So we're still gonna be having the response.
So that draft proposal is a straight draft proposal. That is, we have not even just gone into the weeds on anything. We did not want to. We just wanted to do the presentation, you know, piece on it.
So, may I?
With the existing water treatment we got, do y'all take over that?
We're not, so we do wastewater and we do water. My understanding is you guys are doing very well with your water system, and we're not advocating that. If at some point in the future that was a conversation that we need to have, we would be open to have that. In some communities, we do just wastewater. In some communities, we do both. So that's a conversation.
That was my question.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Would you take over that right there if we?
No, we would recommend to stay in the water business, and keep doing the water business stuff. This would only be for the wastewater piece, just because it is ultimately, I'd say, our only true department that is subsidized.
So, but with this, looking at this, and this is all, we haven't, I know this hasn't gone to negotiation or anything, and I think I'd be more interested when it goes to negotiation. I'd really like us to see us talking about this. It does sound really good, and I would love to get out of the sewer business because it costs us a lot of money to run that. We budget $75,000, we take in 75, but 75,000 doesn't even begin to our expenses there. But it still says that we continue to maintain it, so the sewer lines.
Yes, so maybe I can, help answer that a little bit. So the city is really not able to convey to us necessarily their infrastructure. What you would do is continue to work the lines that you currently have. As those get upgraded or need to be replaced, then we would come in and do that and take those over. So ultimately, over time, we would have all of the sewer infrastructure. Starting out, we would take over operations of the plant. What we anticipate is with some of the growth that's coming to the area, that plant would stay for a while. We would work that plant up to capacity, and then there will be a need for a different plant at some point. That would be something that we would do as well.
And really kind of the public-private partnership piece. So even though it is turnkey ultimately, and, you know, even with the existing, we'll call it infrastructure, again, a lot of that can be kind of washed out in some of the negotiation piece. But if we start working on roads, those are opportunities where public-private partnerships are great. Because if they have the capital to do a lot of projects or certain things, or maybe we have a specific need that maybe they're not ready for, we can then partner with them and use a little bit of capital to go a long way and partner with them, which in turn helps them. And so public-private partnerships are really common, especially in cities that really don't have a lot of tax base. Our tax base is 98% rooftops. And so,
I mean, I love the concept of regional. I think that's what we need to be doing on so many things instead of independently. And my other is we would be responsible for the billing of the new customers that we would bring on and the old customers, the 80 some that we have, but the revenue would go to them. Is that correct?
So when we do our negotiation, when an entity is doing the billing for us, there's always an administrative fee that they would get off that billing. So there's still some income coming into the city to provide for that and to be able to pay for that.
so I hate to use this example, but similar to Waste Management or any other outsourced type entity that belongs to the city. So.
And I will say a couple of questions that I've already heard asked a little bit was, one is, you know, is this going to be a major increase in our billing? It's not. From what I've heard, we're right in that same area where you guys are already charging. What our goal is that we have to bring additional customers onto the plant to make it feasible so that it's not subsidized, because it's either going to be subsidized by you, or it's going to be subsidized by us. And our goal is to bring new customers onto the plant to make sure that doesn't happen. The other one that I've heard a lot is, hey, are we forcing everybody to get off their septic systems? That's really a decision that you guys make. My encouragement would be that as we move through and add lines into places, that folks would want to consider that. That's a permanent option, but it's not something that we force on anybody. So that's not up to us. We are still regulated by the Public Utility Commission and by TCEQ. So we have all the same regulations you guys have. Where our advantage is as there's growth and there's a need for infrastructure, working with the private equity money that we have allows us to be able to do that a little bit quicker, and it also allows us to do that a little bit more efficiently. That results in a couple things. One, we can get into projects quicker and get development done quicker, which actually allows you guys to create that income revenue stream quicker too off of those rooftops and the sales tax.
So y'all do an investment in your facilities, your plants, your infrastructure. Obviously, you have a number of taps that you're looking at doing to cover your cost and recoup, right? So we have any idea what that number is?
Yeah, we would rapidly try to get to about 500 taps or 500 LUEs, which is a use number in that. So some entities, like commercial entities, may be 2 or 3 or even 5 LUEs. But we would try to get to 500 LUEs pretty quickly, depending on what the plant can support also. So the current plant has a limit on it, both from TCEQ and its capabilities. We're going to try to expand to get to that capability as quickly as we can. Ultimately, what I would foresee is that plant would actually go away, a new plant would be built, there'd be some form of a lift station there, that land would come back into use for the city to do something else with.
That'd be something I'd be interested in seeing, is where the proposed lift stations would be, where the proposed plant would be. You're talking about this corridor of 300 acres. I'm assuming part of that's gonna be residential, so that's where you're gonna get the number of taps that you're talking about.
Yeah, the plant is something that we can discuss. That's so our plants are what's called a 5521 plant. There's no smell off the plant. It's a very, very high quality of discharge water. It's the highest that TCEQ does. So the effluent that's coming out is very good effluent. It's not, I mean, nobody in the state of Texas is doing this, but in other states they are. It's actually water you could pump back in to a water system, treat, and then put it back out as potable water. So it's a very high quality. I said nobody in Texas is doing it. I'm not proposing that here. I'm just saying it is a very high quality of water. Shouldn't have said that one. Yeah. Well, there's some states that don't have any option, and that's what they're having to do, and so they're getting to that point. I hope Texas never has to get to that point.
So, you know, and to your point, you know, on the, you know, knowing where the plants are. So we had talked about that with Jesse a while back. We had considered, we actually had gotten a wastewater, or kind of, we'll call it a water utility plan, which would include, you know, wastewater, you know, options. ultimately, kind of based off of some of council's, thought process of we're studied out, we didn't feel it was the right time to even bring it, because you would be looking at $75,000+ to do a wastewater feasibility study in-house. And so, in order for us to even know what that would be, which is kind of where the Temple feasibility goes, just for that one small, we'll call it corridor, that one corridor is specifically for that feasibility. So even if even if council decided to go, with the Temple feasibility as kind of a backup option or a parallel option, what BVRT ultimately will do, should the contract negotiations go through and enter into a contract, to see what that would look like, they would bring all their engineers and everything to do their own feasibility study and bring everything on at no cost to the city. So unless we do our own feasibility study to truly determine like the massive, what it would take, for feasibility, wastewater feasibility, unless council decided to do that master plan or that master study, we won't know unless we do through Temple or BVRT.
The other question I had in the scope of their, what they listed of services they do, I see a lot of master planning. How does that affect our master plan? Would that reduce the amount of our master plan, or is this in conjunction with the master plan?
Absolutely. The master plan is always fluid. Whether it's 1, 5, 10 years, there's gonna be components, just like our parks plan. Our parks plan is still there, or the 2014 master infrastructure plan. We'll be bringing some road projects to that. All we're doing is taking additional studies and then adding those into them. So they're almost like amendments ultimately to those plans.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, what we would do too is use the master plan that you guys have to determine line sizing, location of lift stations, things like that. So we'd look at your master plan, see what the density ratings are that you have for certain areas. That's how we determine then what we're going to build out for infrastructure. So if we know there's a developer coming that say is putting in 100 homes, but that area has the ability to do 500 homes, we want to look at that and see what the long-term rates are for that, as far as how long it's going to take to build that out, how we build that line out, and how the plant supports that.
And then the other question on this, the land behind the safety center. Okay, we own several acres all around there. That is in the city limits. It's annexed into the city limits. It was not in the city limits, but was in our ETJ. And in reading part of this, and there was a lot of different forms, I saw something where it said the house, that they were gonna ask Temple to annex them in, but I was always under the understanding that, because Jim Howe's been talking for years about requesting annexation into our city, so how could he ask for that if it wasn't in our ETJ?
We don't know how they're gonna do it. There's loopholes in that system that I'm trying to work through right now. But yeah, that's the last conversation that I've had with them.
We have, and the developer's always gone under the assumption it's in our ETJ, not Temple's.
No, it is. It is in our ETJ. That 104 acres is.
Okay.
But there
Because-
are,
because in here it's talked about.
but there are legal loopholes that larger cities prevail, and the other side is the CCN. CCNs are typically more powerful than ETJs, and we don't have that CCN because it never got expanded out. So yes, that is another topic of discussion that we're working through right now. There's a lot of behind the scenes on that one. And that would be an executive session one in the future if we needed to.
On the money that we're gonna likely have to spend if we go to option 3 over the next year or two, if we went with BVRT would then take over the waste treatment and would have to assume the burden of replacing those
Correct.
components.
Correct. So again, through that replacement is where we start to begin to take over the system, and it becomes a totally private system. So if there's anything that we're putting the infrastructure money in, then we take that over and we take that on. Again, our goal is going to be to increase the number of people using the system so that those things can all operate and fund themselves. Yeah. Really, what I would say right now is that the cost of what's happening on the billing side right now is really subsidizing the operations of the plant. As we start to expand that, what happens is that cost stays the same to the customer, but that money is going to debt repayment then for the infrastructure that's added in to increase the number of people into the plant. Right now, the plant's, there's no way the plant's operating with that number of people on it, with the money that's coming in. They're subsidizing all of that, and it's, yeah. So, yeah, okay. Yes, we do, and that's what we would do first. We would look to bring in people that would want to expand onto that plant, come into that plant.
It's about, we're doing right now roughly about 5,000 gallons a day, and it's permitted, I think, at 23,000 gallons a day, give or take.
24.
Okay, 24,000, so
So we're running at 25%?
20%.
20.
Yeah, about 20%. And really, the 55,000 a day is probably the higher end. That's kind of the.
It's fluctuating 5 to
Okay.
7,000.
Okay, so 5 to 7.
And I also want to say also, and I know this isn't a deal with you guys, but I just want you guys to know too, that one of the things that we've done in the past when we come into communities, we never want anybody to lose their job anyhow. And I'd already talked to Mr. Rice about this. If there was somebody that needed to be put out because of the plant going, then we would look to hire them. But they've assured me that those folks are all needed on the water side, and Jesse and I've talked about that as well. So there's not anything like that that's happening either. But in other communities where we've come in and there has been somebody that would have been pushed out, we've just brought them into our operations. So,
And that shouldn't happen, we need all the.
We do not.
Exactly.
Yeah, we do not expect that at all.
I think we really have to look at that proposal pretty hard, because that's cost savings, unreal.
Well, and the reason we've discussed it over a period of a few years was because every solution coming back to us was not feasible. It was too expensive, and we were talking about a small area, so it's not that we kicked it down the road or procrastinated or whatever, but it just wasn't feasible at this time. But we said, cities, still keep exploring options for us, as council's told them, keep exploring, which I appreciate y'all doing that. It sounds like what the staff would like us to do is to let y'all kind of further negotiate as far as this contract, and then maybe come back and workshop where we can ask a lot of questions or,
But we'd have to come back, I mean, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what
Yeah, our.
if you want us to go further with it, and which we're talking, and once we do that, then obviously it all comes back to council.
And, yeah, our staff recommendation ultimately, and, you know, I think we'd be looking at February, March timeframe of bringing kind of we'll call it a 98%, you know, contract, draft back. We could do an infrastructure workshop, which we actually have planned. I talked to the mayor about that in, I think, February timeframe, which we could include some of that in there. It'll be a lot of road-driven projects on that one. But yeah, our recommendation is have, you know, us start contract negotiations, you know, with the mayor and, you know, other council members. We can sit down, start working with them. Because again, it's not just about taking over the plant, you know, how do we make sure that we, you know, expand it the right way at a reasonable rate for them, at a reasonable rate for us, and kind of work through some of those things. So that's our recommendation.
And I would say the other thing with BVRT is I mean, we are in the utility business, but what we really like to do is come in and work with communities on community development. I've met with Linda, we've talked about different things, we've talked about what type of growth you guys are really wanting. And so we've already brought in some people to take a look around that are financial people and developer people under that auspice of the types of things that Morgan's Point would want. So we're interested in helping with community development as well, not just the utility infrastructure. That helps us, I'm not gonna lie, but it's also a benefit for you guys, and so that's something that we try to do as well.
well, I'm excited about the possibilities, so.
Dalton, does,
We want to put that to a vote, Dalton, and we move forward, put it to a vote. And also, nothing's firm until y'all approve it, you understand that, it's all
Dalton, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
If moving forward with BVRT, does that improve our negotiations with the conversation about the CCN versus the ETJ with whoever developer we're talking to?
It could, I don't know. We don't have those options. That is a great question. Now, what I do know is any CCN work that is required, they'll do the CCNs. So they'll do all the work on CCNs to make sure that if there is any opportunity to, you know, expand them out, branch them out, then yes. So, yes, it could open the door. That I don't know what that would look like though.
So all you're asking for tonight is just permission to move forward with
Right.
negotiations, not to spend any money,
Yeah.
not
Right.
do anything.
Unless y'all want to go
I
with
need
option
help.
one as well, in conjunction with, you know, to have that fallback. So the only money that council would decide on to spend money tonight would be approving, you know, allocating funds to do the feasibility study with City of Temple. And then, of course, staff's main recommendation is to begin the contract negotiations with BVRT.
I think option one is only a backup.
That's how we're looking at option one.
I just feel like this,
Go with option two.
Option two.
yeah,
Option one is a backup.
You're just just asking for the direction we wanna go.
Right, right.
So,
All I gave you-
let's say option
Gotta vote
two.
on it, yeah.
Option two.
Option two.
Second.
Yeah, that's
Any
it.
more discussion on that? Go ahead. All in favor of
I'll
that,
move in.
approve option two? All in favor?
Aye.
You opposed? Okay, we're gonna go.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, and thank the city staff.
Good
y'all, the
presentation.
mayor, and Robbie for working on this.
Okay, next thing on the agenda is discuss and consider communications and marketing coordinator. Here, motion to accept that.
I make a motion to accept it.
And I second it.
Now it's open for discussion. Anybody want any comments?
Well, I mean, I think it was at the last council meeting that we talked about doing as a matter of fact, Robbie brought it up to do a workshop on this position to make sure we all understand it and that we all see the need for this individual. That might be something that we wanna do at the February.
Well, we've been talking about it now for
Yeah.
4 months, 5 months. It was put on the budget.
And here's the,
It has already been budgeted for.
Well, I understand the budget's been there.
There's the job.
But nobody approved to do it.
Nobody approved the position, and when we took it on October 16th,
See, I thought we did
asked
approve
that
it
the
when it
position,
was there.
we asked it to get a job description and put it on hold. And the hold was for further discussion, which we didn't have till
but
last
there's
month.
the job description.
We got the job description the very next month, Dalton got it for us.
Right.
I said the motion was, and I made the motion very clearly, and I asked y'all to give me your input as I made it. It said to put the position on hold it said to, get the job description, which he did, and put it on hold for further discussion, which we never had that until last month. So we're not kicking it down the road, or it's been several months, and we are doing what we said in that. It just didn't come back to us other than the job description. The other thing was clearly that I said the money I wanted to leave in there is a placement, because if you remember, we had 10 positions that did not get any increase in their salary. Now, we found out later that 2 were vacant and 1 had been put in a different position, so the money could stay the same. But we had 7 employees that got 0.
2.
Yeah,
Well,
but,
well, you said 2 vacancies and 1
No,
other.
two total at the end. The very first proposal we did was 10. Council decided to go ahead and allocate some funding to additional employees. We went back to the drawing board and revamped it, and then it came out that it was 4 positions roughly, and 2 of those ultimately ended up not doing it, so that
Right.
ended up.
My point is, in the August 16th meeting, that money sitting there, we said could help us in those positions. And also, we had not discussed the city manager's salary, and so we were gonna need extra money in that funding for that. So, my motion that I made said to have the position and to put it on hold, so we could have further discussion. If you don't wanna do it in a workshop like what was voted on last month, I'm happy to discuss it.
I wanna,
go on the record, Bruce, and say that I asked for a workshop so that we could get this thing moving along. It wasn't going anywhere, and I felt like if we needed as a council to have a workshop and hash it out, then let's do it.
well,
But-
after discussing with a lot of people and got their input and their feelings on it, and talking long distance to a lot of people, calling people long distance on my vacation, I think we need a position.
Mayor Green, can I talk for a minute? Mayor Green?
I agree. I had heard from so many people emailing me, calling me. A lot of the people out there right now.
Well, there's always gonna be 2 sides. I've heard from people on
We
the
also-
other
we
side.
also
There is
heard-
2 sides.
We also heard from both sides, and let me tell you, my position is, it isn't that I'm against doing it. Who wouldn't need a communication person? You can always get better in communication. I talked to numerous people too, on both sides of it. I talked to volunteers, I talked to local residents. My position is, it's not, do we need a communications marketing? Yeah, of course, we could all benefit by that, that's fantastic. But you know, the cities that have this position have a hotel motel tax to help subsidize it. We do not have that. I mean, I think we can build to that. We've got our EMBs that are coming up. They're funded by a revenue stream for positions like this. We are not. My concern is, and I know I'm beating a horse every single time, but we are 3 years behind in that audit. We don't have audited figures from 18, 19. We have a good idea that we have the funds available. We have not seen that by an audit. The last time that we did an audit, it was revealed that though the city thought they had $2 million in surplus, they had $2 million in the entire budget. None of you, I don't believe, were on the council at that time except Dennis and I. And we had to freeze everything because what happened was, like we just approved the 3.6. Is that everything? Is that turnkey? We know we've got to have that water project. That's a must for our citizens, a top priority. Is that the end of it, 3.6? Because I know that they got it in phases for us to break it down. So if we can't have it at 3.6, how much more? 100,000, 200,000? We don't know the cost of this. So my concern is if we could at least get some budgeted firm figures, even if we had the one audit where it said, here's what you've got. Because moving forward, we know it will be easier. We don't have that.
Well,
And
isn't
honestly,
isn't that what the finance director and city manager
You know
for?
where we're at. You know, the thing that is, do we wait till we always get the money before we move forward with the city? If we did that, we.
Do we
we'd
have to
that
have
number
this
30 years ago.
do we have to have this
We've got to move forward
position?
with certain things, and with the assurances that we have already. So
Do we have to have-
May I ask?
It's been made, and it's been seconded, and I think we need to call it to a vote.
Janice, I'm still in a discussion
we're having
phase. I don't
discussion.
think it's right to cut off the discussion, which is why we wanted a
But
workshop.
if you don't repeat yourself again, we're good.
I'm going down a list that I have, and if I know last time you cut me off very rudely, so I wrote down my remarks. I talked to people, volunteers. I know we got a comment from a city from a volunteer that said that they're burned out. They later told me, the wrong word, they're frustrated. Okay. With Robert's financial thing, and Carrie is now moved to assistant manager, plus he's doing all our finances. I could understand if we were trying to hire a financial position. I'm sorry, but I don't understand why a city of 5,000 with no revenue stream coming in finds this position so important. The website, the Notify Me's are getting more and more people. I read those remarks on Neighbors of Mortgage Point, and the communication was off, but some of them that are Notify Me say they love it. They talk about a newsletter. The city used to have a newsletter, but we outsourced it. We didn't hire a full position. And you're talking anywhere with benefits from $60,000 to $80,000. And I'm just saying, pardon me? A year. And this is the thing, we're not talking about a one-time expense. Okay, we're gonna do a feasibility study for $73,000. We're talking about from here on. When have you ever known our city to cut somebody out of a position?
Now, are we talking about this position or feasibility study?
The example is, it's not a one-time expense. This is here and after. And what I'm saying is we do not have an audit to, and I trust Carrie's figures, but you know what? We were giving figures on paper of what it was. The audit's gonna come in great. I have no doubt it's gonna come in great. But why are we continually spending money? Do we know what each of the projects that we approved are gonna cost us? We don't.
Do we have the
need
money
turnkey.
city manager?
From what we can tell right now with our figures based off of cash, if you look at the financial reports, you can see what's restricted and what's unrestricted. I'm confident that we have the cash. Or I'm confident that we have the revolving funds for it.
Of the projects that we, what projects don't we have figures on?
Okay, well, when we approved the 3.6 for the groundwater, which was our top priority, everybody's top priority. Okay, is that everything? The problem we ran into before, with the city budget was that the city council prior to us approved projects, which they showed that they had the money, which they did. The problem was, then it turned out, but to finish it, but first we've got to have an engineering study, $100,000. And now we need to dig some lines and bring in a contractor, is that 3.6 turnkey completely?
I don't think any project's ever turnkey.
Okay, but we don't know, it's such a huge project, little projects, you're gonna have little things. But this is a huge project, we borrowed $2 million, we're putting whatever we have left of the COVID money on it, and we're still gonna have more money. I'm just saying, are we being good stewards to bring on the third position in less than 2 years in administration, when I see the needs, and the city clearly with the audit, that's a state mandated law that we're talking about for these audits. And what I'm saying is really is the communication and marketing position, and these are hard decisions. I know out there, you know, our citizens are like, oh, we need this. Of course we do, and of course we want it. Well, we're not paid to make the easy decisions and just, you know, I wanna see the money, I wanna see the audits done, I wanna see the money we budget for roads being used for roads. And I'm just not seeing the necessity, I guess. The question was, do we need one? No. I think if we need a position, there's certainly other bigger positions to do. So that's how I feel about it. And I know
So
you
it
wanna-
needs to go to a vote because we have
Any other
conflicting.
discussion? We got Don's opinion.
Well, I mean, I don't, you know, we're supposed to do what's right for the city and what's right for the taxpayers. And in my heart, I can't say that we are right now because we don't have those audit figures. If you owned your own company and you didn't know exactly what you had, would you hire a person? Would you spend that money?
Okay, how long is it gonna take to get those audit figures? We've
I
been
don't
doing
know.
it for 5 years.
I don't know. You need to ask him how long it's gonna take to get the audit.
It's our city, we need our city manager to and I know that you've got it. This one is in audit, but we don't, I think what you say, the first of the year?
So
they're
we're,
supposed to get it back to us?
I was gonna give it in the city manager update. So the audits, basically everything's right now with the auditors. So, you know, just like, Dane over at the audit, or Lot Vernon had said by the end of the year, so we're expecting it by the end of the year. We are already working on just the first one. So we are expecting, I've already given notice to Carrie, and I've already given notice ultimately to Lot Vernon, that if we don't have something by the end of the year, we're gonna have a recommendation to council to go a completely different direction, whatever that looks like. Because it is. No, I mean, he's 100% correct. It is. But this is what happened. So either way, you know, without pointing fingers, without placing blame, you know, on any one person, this is what we're dealing with.
And I understand that. I don't, because it was given as a top priority 2 years ago, and even further before that. We were told we were in audits when we weren't. But the problem is, and I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about this is state mandated that we have an audit every year. Folks, this is super important. And we're saying, well, let's spend this, let's approve this project, let's do this, let's do that. I just wanna see 1 year of audited figures, and I can rest assured to say, you know what, we've got this discretionary income. And this 3.6 million is only gonna cost us $4
Okay,
million.
we've already been in that path. I think you've had it for a vote, John.
Yes.
I'm gonna ask for it. Everybody express their opinions. Y'all have anything y'all wanna say? Okay, all in favor of hiring the coordinator? Yes or no? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Three for, 2 opposed, motion passes. Okay, moving right along, okay, we're talking about the ordinance number 2022-13.
Sorry, 6C. Discuss and consider, I'm sorry, resolution 2022-30 approving appointment of member.
Has to do with the storage building will make it off.
Nope,
No.
one before that.
We haven't done C yet.
See. 20, 22, 30.
20, 22, 30.
Oh, thank you, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, that's resolution 2022-30, approving appointment of a new member to the planning and zoning. And I think that's Lou, right? Yes, sir. Lou, you stand up in case everybody doesn't recognize you? Excuse me, sir. I think Ken and planning and zoning have approved his nomination, recommended to the new planning and zoning board? Correct. Okay, do I have a?
I'll make a motion I'll make the motion.
Second. Second. Any questions? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations, Lou, I guess.
Thank you.
I say I guess, we'll find out, right?
Welcome.
Okay, discuss and consider resolution ordinance 2022-13, the amendment of ordinance zoning 4-32, code of ordinance and adding provision for storage of vacant lots. Dawson has a pretty good idea on that right there, and I'm gonna let him take it.
Surprisingly, I really don't. But so where the context behind this was, it wasn't a massive change, it was really just kind of an amendment. Our ordinance kind of lacked some context as far as what could be done on vacant lots. So we had talked about contiguous properties, to a building structure or something. Well, this one came up, says, hey, if I have a lot that's just in the random Morgan's Point Resort, can I go put my RV on it? Can I go put my accessory building or storage or something? And so what ultimately this did is clean it up that says any storage on undeveloped lots is prohibited, if council wants to go that direction.
Yeah, and actually, I think we have an ordinance that says you can't put a trailer, and a lot of times they use that as storage. So we do have that, so this just makes it.
This is kind of just really putting more context, or detail, to that.
I move for the adoption of ordinance number 2022-13.
That's second.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, board of directors, okay. Discuss, consider resolution 2022-29, approving members serving unexpired terms for the EDC board of directors. And I think that's, Jason, is in here?
Yeah, Jason Johnson and myself.
And yourself, right, they expired with Marla and somebody else. Like to do too. Y'all recommend these, well, I don't need to recommend yourself, all in favor?
I make a recommendation. Make a motion, I'm sorry.
Any opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay. This is what I got mixed up, this was you were, utility reconnect ordinance.
Yes, sir. So.
Sorry, I got that ahead of the deal while ago.
Oh, no. So Mayor, Council, this kind of came about and really wanted to open this up to y'all. This is not changing any fees. It really should be an amendment to the ordinance. But what we kind of ran into, obviously, we have anywhere between 30 to 60 residents that get their water cut off for a multitude of reasons. Okay, it happened.
Monthly, right?
I'm sorry?
Monthly.
Monthly, yes, sir, monthly. And so what we kind of realized, since our hours are from 7 to 4, when we say after hours, we were charging a reconnect fee of $60 after hours up until 8 p.m. And I'm kind of torn about it just because, hey, I know not everybody gets that, back home from the office at 5 o'clock. And then if you get in after 5, yeah, you can call. Either way, kind of the thought process, I could be my own devil's advocate on this one. So ultimately what we're recommending on this is from 4 to 6, if a resident calls for a reconnect, we'll go out there, turn on their water, but it won't be an additional reconnect fee. From 6 to 8 p.m., it would be standardized. So really the way it is now is from 4 to 8 p.m., you're paying $60. But because of our hours are kind of unique, at 4 o'clock, our after hours, some people don't even get off work until 5 when they realize they made a bad decision. I can see both sides where, hey, you let it go to disconnect. But then also too, we understand that there's a lot of, unforeseen circumstances.
This isn't a large revenue stream, it's more of a courtesy.
It is. And so really and the other hour that kind of changed was at 7 a.m. So basically, 7 a.m. and water doesn't typically get there till 8, give or take. So ultimately, those on call. So our business hours are from 7 to 4. We're recommending that during business hours, it's not going to cost you anything to go out there and reconnect until 6 p.m. From 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., it'll cost you the $60 reconnect or weekends if you had to come out there and do that. So really just a change in kind of time to try to do that. Again, I could go either way with it. I just wanted to put this to discussion for council on y'all's thoughts and recommendations.
Makes sense to me.
Do we need to pass this as an ordinance, or
You can pass this and we can figure that out, but yes, sir. If y'all are happy with basically this is the ordinance changes on the next page after the memo.
So the only thing really changing is just a couple of hours.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're not adding any
Giving them
fees,
the
we're actually
benefit of
taking
the-
away
Yeah,
fees.
giving them more time.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I hear a motion to accept that.
I'll
I
make a
make-
motion to accept.
Motion to second.
Second.
Any further discussion on it? Anybody have any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Okay, item G, discuss and consider resolution 2022-31, approving the use of a mobile data terminal. This, as I understand, we got a grant for that?
Yes, sir. So, you'll start kind of seeing a lot more grants that we do get approved. You know, obviously, the success rates of grants can be, variable. We are, Carrie, I know Carrie is improving and Catherine are improving the, kind of the grant sheet, to my nitpicky liking. So this one, we had, getting ready for submit for mobile data terminals for law enforcement. How much was it for? 27,000-ish, give or take. So this is just, and there's no match on this one, it is 100% funded.
Love that.
Do you hear a motion to accept that?
I make a motion, we accept
Well,
that.
you got a typo in there as far as your dollar amount.
I'm sorry, Bruce, I didn't hear.
There's a typo in there as far as the dollar amount is 27 million.
Oh, that's nice.
I like that grant. Where's that?
There's just an extra,
There's an extra 2 in there.
it's not 27 million, but yeah, if you go with all of us, it's
27,172.
Yeah,
Oh, that's my bad.
27,172.
That's my bad.
We're gonna adjust that.
Carrie didn't babysit me on this one.
Okay, and since he asked the question, also in the resolution, it says in our notation, it's 100% funded, and then it talks about the city of Morgan Point agrees for matching funds.
Correct. So every grant resolution will have something like that, even if it's 100% funded. So for example, if it came back and said it was 28,000 or 29,000, and they're only gonna fund 27,000, then we would still be responsible for it, and the grant entirely could be contingent upon receiving that piece. So we're in the process of hashing out some of our grant, policies, I guess you can say, or procedures. But that's common in grant resolutions that are 100% funded, should that request go over. So ideally, what's gonna be in there is what it is, and, yes, sir.
I think what this hinged on was we asked for a certain amount for, some extra stuff. They denied it, they just gave us the MDTs, and then basically Dalton said that, hey, we budget for it, it's already in our budget to get the peripherals that we needed. So basically, the board of the grant was basically contingent on if we're gonna get support on getting the other materials we need.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me on that one, Sergeant Hodge. Yes, so this one was, in a lot of grants will have kind of a pre-app and then the post-app. This is the one that we went and talked, Sheetsy and I, that you gave us really terrible numbers. So this was one we actually went up to the COG and we actually had to go to our state reps to really push the OAG's office to make sure that it got funded. So they already had budgeted in the budget for the MDT, the other portion of the MDT. So it's 100% of what they're gonna authorize for funding, and then the rest was gonna be. But that's still a common one, even without that funding, because sometimes you just don't know what they're gonna award when you send the application. So when we start actually doing like Safe Routes to School, when it finally comes to that fruition, we'll come to council with a resolution that'll basically say 100% funded, with the provision of this in there. We won't even know what that funding is at that point in time. Now, again, we'll figure out how that looks. They usually are pretty close to it, but if we add like an extra thing onto it, then that comes out of our pocket.
Well, in the future, let's think of some different verbiage, because when you say matching funds, we're approving that if it would be over.
This was a template, yeah, this was a template straight from them, so we'll make sure we clean it up a little bit.
Yeah, let's do our own. I'd be more comfortable
So
with that.
just for clarification for the citizens, MDT.
Mobile data terminal, so the computers that they have, for process, yeah, those things. What Sergeant Hodges,
Do we have a motion to second?
I made a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, next item on the agenda is discuss the feasibility of purchasing and implementing the Neptune system, and I'm not familiar with that, I don't know what Dalton's talking to me about, so I'm gonna let him take it from there.
so let me make sure it's the right. Yep, so the PowerPoint presentation that you see, This is preemptive, but what I'm starting to try to do, and I'll give this in the update, city manager update. I wanted to bring this to y'all kind of really preemptively from a concept idea. If you look at kind of the heat maps, those are basically all the green. That's based off of train and antennas. The cut and dry of this, what the AMI Neptune system is, all of our water meters are digital. We're working and improving that process. We have had some, we'll say issues here and there with some of the utility billing, systems where sometimes the meters don't get read right, or there's a human error, or sometimes even a technology error. But either way, roughly about 6 to 10 hours a month, give or take. Our water crews go out and manually, I say manually, but they drive by with a radar, they read the meters and go forward.
Right.
What this AMI system does is it ultimately digitizes the whole process. So whenever we can set it up for scheduling to be sent to our utility billing software at any point in time. But more importantly, what this does, and kind of the reason we wanted to present this to council, is it gives a lot more power to the residents, in their hands. So ultimately, they can download an app, and we have this in some other cities. They can download their app, they have their account number and stuff in there, and they can get notifications. So if they get a leak or a leak springs in the system, it'll notify them that they have a leak. It'll, talk about their water usage, and really just kind of gives them residents more self-awareness on it. Our meters are capable of doing that currently. Ultimately, you would need the AMI system. I don't have a price on it yet, so this discussion and consideration ultimately is saying, do we think that this is a great idea and we want to pursue it and bring y'all more information on this, costs and what this would look like? Or do we think that we don't need this and the way we are kind of doing it is the way for right now? So I want to start trying to bring some of these larger projects, even just talking about some of the feasibility piece of it and the direction that we want to go. Because if y'all don't even want to do this, then we don't have to, waste the vendor's time, their time, staff's time, kind of processing it.
What kind of man hours are we looking at reducing?
Well, that's what I'm saying is we don't know. So this is only step one. We're not saying approve this with a blank check and we go in and do this. No, this is just saying, do y'all like the concept? Do y'all think the residents, would benefit and want something like this, and we should pursue it to see what those numbers would be? Or if y'all say no now, we can be like, hey, we're not interested, and we can take this off of our plate completely for the time being.
Technology is always a great thing.
It's always good to keep current, but
So.
of course we need to know.
No, absolutely. Like I said.
It is a great idea to keep current.
Yeah.
with
And
technology.
for anything done, it'd be brought to council for approval. regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. We just wanted to make sure since,
I agree with Bruce.
I mean,
Technology is always,
You know,
gotta look at it.
if it's gonna benefit the city by cutting some man hours, not driving around, and it's gonna,
Maybe do other projects, I think it's.
no, absolutely. Yeah, this was definitely preemptive. We'll have a much more thought out presentation, but things like this, especially since it is new, technology can, be great, but it also can be a hindrance. And hey, at the end of the day, if council, feels based off of, what the constituents are saying are not ready for it, hey, we could shut it off, we could take it off the table right now, and come back at a later date. So I want to start trying to do some of these larger things from the get-go, even if I may not have all the information to keep y'all informed, so we can work through this process as it starts coming
I
up.
think that's, you're being very part of this part, anyway, so let's leave it there. Anything wrong with that, and you wanna give us any other updates, you have anything else you wanna let us on, or you?
I do. So a couple things on the agendas. Let me talk about that. So our agendas, we're actually using our new agenda management software. More to follow. Jaman and Dorothy are going to be putting on the website I call it the hub, or they call it the hub. Either way, it's going to be a lot more user-friendly. If you look on your agenda sheet, you can see the letters that are in blue in your actual large packet. Obviously, you can't press on this because it's not digital, but that PDF now, you'll be able to click on those links and it'll take you right to the packet item. Everything is going to be ultimately digitized outside of us printing it, which is really, we had the agenda posted by Wednesday, almost at noon, and we can make a lot of tweaks and changes prior to that time. So ultimately, what this is going to lead to is us having us having all the information for city by the Friday before packets are due. And the goal is to have agendas and everything published and posted, packets and everything by Wednesday at noon, the week before council. Similar to kind of what y'all had talked about during the retreat, to get that information out as soon as possible. That is the goal that we are actually working towards, and this is going to be a lot more efficient. I wanted to talk about the discuss and consider, and just, we kind of put it in the, some of the adjournment piece, or maybe not even the adjournment piece, but some other sections in here. Y'all can discuss and consider anything on this agenda, whether it says discuss, whether it says just consider. This is city council's agenda. If it just says discuss on it, y'all can still consider whatever y'all want on those items. Just, we do not dictate what is discussed and considered. Council, as a governing body, discusses and considers those items. So I just wanted to clarify that.
I mean, we can vote on it. Is that-
Y'all can, outside of,
It doesn't have- we can vote on it.
outside of,
as long as
yeah.
it's on the agenda.
outside of what Neil says, you know, and yells at you during it, if something comes up, then y'all can do what y'all need to do. Even if I just take consider off of it and it just says discuss, y'all can vote on whatever y'all want, however y'all wanna do it. The other thing too on the agenda piece, which we're gonna kinda play around with, you know, here, you can see that Ophelia's kinda working on a laptop, you know, with the minutes. We're trying to streamline some, you know, again, streamline some of the minutes to make it a more efficient so we can get the information out there as quickly as possible. The other thing, we already are live streaming this. We are now gonna be able to link this to the website, and when you click on the video option on the website, once we get that up and running, I gotta get with Jaman hopefully in the next couple weeks, before January meeting. You'll be able to click on that video, watch the live stream with an actual agenda next to it that you can click on the packet items, you know, as they're going through that agenda. Once the meeting's over, we can actually go back and timestamp each part of that, excuse me, that video, and then residents will be able to go and click through the video of the timestamps based off of what's on the agenda, and they can, you know, continue to
It's kind of cool.
to find out what's going on. One component that we haven't dove into yet, but that's gonna probably come in the next, you know, I'd say 90 days plus, we'll be able to tie ordinances to that as well. So if a council adopts an ordinance, we'll be able to click adopt ordinance in the system with the votes, and it'll automatically go to MuniCode, which actually is up and running, where our code of ordinances are codified. And it'll put in the respective location that'll say adopted pending codification. You'll be able to click on that and it'll link you back to other places within that agenda of where it was discussed, and the topic of discussion on that. So again, a lot more user-friendly, and trying to get that word out there. Sales tax, you know, I wanted to give an update on the sales tax piece. While they were down this month and last month by 1,000, we're actually still net positive, I think 10,000, give or take. Something like that. So we've had some months where we were up $7,000, $8,000 from previous sales tax months. So looking at it on a per month basis, yeah, it may be down, but on a rolling 12, we're actually up and on par, you know, with some of that. A recent article I think I sent all of council was some of the diversification ratios or diversification percentages of cities. And each city is different. So whether that's hotel, motel, rooftops, commercial property, sales tax, whatever, we're roughly sitting about 98% of rooftop as far as our revenue. And so it is a very stable revenue stream, but it all goes to the rooftops and the taxpayers. So until it can kind of diversify a little bit out, which it's not gonna do much, but unless it diversifies out, ultimately the taxpayers have to carry that burden, you know, of that. And so planning and having those up-to-date studies or having those up-to-date plans, bringing that stuff to council, ultimately to make those decisions, we're gonna be going through CIP planning, fixed asset replacement planning, which will then start planning for, you know, large infrastructure projects, you know, $500,000, $1 million+ infrastructure projects, you know, 1, 3, 5 years out. And so that'll be one of the big workshops. Really, that's gonna be the council retreat for this coming year, is to develop the CIP and fixed asset replacement fund. I think that should be it.
Council, have any comments, anybody want to?
I have
Well, you want to do the,
This is the auxiliary report that Karen Steiner, the president, puts together. They last met on December 8th, and they've been very active in December. They, as of today, 100 welcome bags have been handed out to the NPR neighbors in the last 6 months. And they're in the process of assembling 100 more. So if you know somebody new to your neighborhood or whatever, let's get in contact with them. It's so nice to get that little welcome, you know, basket. So she wanted to thank everyone who came out out to see Santa on the 2nd. The auxiliary appreciate, loves to participate each year. They help the city serving cocoa and coffee, and they did cookies, and they did ballooning animals, and Pastor Jeremy helped out. There's some unsung heroes that never get any credit, and that's the water department. I spend 3 hours on a hayride up and down the city singing at the top of my lungs, and Landon, who works for the water department, goes right along with me for those 3 hours. And also the water department drives our hayride, so pass on my appreciation to them. So it was a great event. If y'all didn't get to see it, it was absolutely fantastic.
I missed that one, Donna. I need to come out and listen to you sing.
You need to come out and sing with me. I need all the help I can get, believe me. And they want to thank everybody that came out for the Volunteer Fire Association chili fundraiser. And then Mark Wilkinson is the one who made the chili, and it was very good, and I can attest to the fact it was delicious. And thanks to the neighbors who supported by sponsoring direction signs to the event, and to Walmart on Adams, they always help with our events. We're so grateful that we have them. It was a great evening of neighborhood fellowship with our firefighters and a worthwhile cause, which it certainly was. On December 9th, they attended the Fire and Police Awards celebration, and they said there's not enough words to describe how proud they are of them, and they're truly blessed to have the dedicated and hardworking professionals, and I think we all agree with that, police and fire. Unfortunately, they're not here because the firefighters, like the auxiliary members, they are wrapping approximately 100 gifts for Santa Pal. Isn't that wonderful? They want to thank the neighbors who donated toys and food to this event to help out our less fortunate families. Volunteer Firefighters Association, they'll deliver with Santa Claus, and that's for the 18th. They're also having their lighting contest going on, so light up your houses the 12th through the 18th, 6 to 9. They're going to be out there being judges on, the homes out there, so light up your houses. In the meantime, it says on December 20th, the auxiliary will be delivering Christmas goodie bags to the 27 firefighters, so they do that every year for their firefighters. And it says, please follow the Ladies Auxiliary on a Facebook page. You have a great Facebook page. And NPR, What's Happening, the Notify Me's, it's always on there. We want to remind everybody about the Valentine Ball in February. Great event. And then they want to thank, as they're closing out the year, they want to thank the mayor, the council, city manager, city administration, all city departments, volunteer firefighters, NPR cops, Fellowship Church, NPR businesses, and our wonderful neighbors. We love our little big city volunteering and serving. Your vision, devotion, support, and enthusiasm help keep the auxiliary motivated and active. Thank you for keeping us moving forward and serving. Respectfully, Karen Steiner. And we sure appreciate this group also, along with our cops group.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
You had, followed that up, you had any further comments?
I just wanted to say, it's been brought up a couple times about the sales tax, and I think there are people concerned we may have sales tax going to other cities. A couple of years ago, Mark Allen, when he was with EDC, and I got together, we got sales tax from Belton and ours. We did find some that weren't paying sales tax to our city. So I'm gonna request it next month that we do have a report to make that comparison. You might wanna get EDC in on it to help. But let's go ahead, let's take a look at that. It could be just that things are down, and I know they are.
They
Inflation's
give
high.
you a list of the taxpayers that are paying your report?
Yeah, they'll give us that list. What we do is we get Belton's, because so much of it, people put down Belton, Texas on the paper, and so it's going to Belton. So we look at the addresses to see if they're physically in our city, we should be getting a sales tax. So we definitely,
Are you gonna do that, you want us to?
no, I mean, I think somebody. from
We'll talk about it
EDC,
on
I think
next,
it's appropriate.
next council.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate that EDC, somebody at EDC help out, and then a staff member. And then also just wanna say Merry Christmas to everyone. We won't see you again until 2023, so have a wonderful, blessed Christmas. And thank you for coming.
Well, thanks for hanging in there tonight. It was a long meeting. Appreciate y'all sticking around with us, and yeah, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everybody. Hope you have a safe holiday.
I want to thank everybody that reached out for these hard decisions we have to make.
All right.
Thank you for coming. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas, and we'll see y'all in 2023.
Bobby?
For the citizens that are still here, thank y'all for sticking it out. Thank you for your comments. Really appreciate it. It's a job that when we do these meetings like this, and it does weigh heavy on us, city. And I just want everybody to know that I want y'all to have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you for coming.
Even though it says like we fight each other up here, we're still friends, and we walk out of here, we still shake hands. So I would say it's not a good sign, so it's visiting again. Thank you, Donna, for being in this cause this year.
Oh, you're welcome.
And,
I'll turn my
I
lights
love
on, turn my lights on now.
25 years, you can't outgrow the park. Can't get
anyway,
too
thank you
old
for
too
being
fast.
here. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you.
Any opposed?